The moon hung fat and full over the Arkansas River that October night in 1874, casting a pale, sickly light across the Kansas plains. Cole Brennan rode hard through the darkness, his cavalry uniform still stiff with the dust of 3 months spent patrolling the vast emptiness of the territory. His Appaloosa, Jasper, knew the way home by heart, his hooves drumming a rhythm that Cole usually found comforting. 2 miles to the ranch, 2 miles to Grace, 2 miles to the warmth of the house and the life they had built together over 5 years of marriage. He was tired, bone-deep tired, but the thought of her smile spurred him on. Then he heard the scream. It came from the direction of the river, high and desperate, cutting through the droning song of the crickets like a knife through silk. It was a sound that stopped the blood in his veins. Cole didn't think. He kicked Jasper into a full gallop. The riverbank materialized through the cottonwoods, shadows stretching like grasping fingers, and there in the moonlight, his world shattered. He saw her, Grace. Her body floated face down in the water, her dark hair spreading like ink across the silver surface. Her blue dress, the one she wore for special occasions, billowed around her like a collapsed parachute. Cole threw himself from the saddle before the horse even stopped moving. The cold water hit him like a fist, soaking his boots and trousers instantly, but he felt nothing but panic. He waded in, the mud sucking at his feet, grabbed her and turned her over. Her eyes stared at nothing, fixed on a sky she could no longer see. Her lips had gone blue. Her skin felt like marble, cold, hard, and final. Cole pulled her to the shore, his hands shaking so hard he could barely grip her wet fabric. He laid her on the grass and pressed his ear to her chest, praying to a God he hadn't spoken to in years. Nothing. No heartbeat. No breath. No Grace. His vision blurred, his throat closed tight as if a rope were tightening around it. He lifted her hand to his cheek, desperate for a phantom warmth, and that was when he felt it. Bruises. Dark purple rings encircled her wrist, the kind that came from someone gripping hard, squeezing, holding her down against her will. He turned her arm in the moonlight and saw it clearly, a mark, circular and indented, like a heavy ring had pressed into her flesh during a violent struggle. It was not a wedding band. It was something thicker, something with a protruding stone. Cole looked at Grace's other hand. It was clenched in a fist, rigor mortis already beginning to set in. He pried her cold, stiff fingers open one by one. Inside, she clutched a single stalk of black barley grass. Cole froze. Black barley did not grow on their land. It only grew south of the river, on the vast estate belonging to Samuel Cross. Cole sat there in the mud with his dead wife in his arms and felt something break inside him that would never heal. He did not cry. He could not. The grief was too big for tears. It filled his chest like wet concrete, heavy and cold and permanent. Behind him, he heard horses approaching. The sheriff, the doctor, neighbors drawn by his horse's frantic arrival in town. They pulled him away from Grace. They wrapped her in a blanket. They asked him questions he could not answer because the only answer was a scream trapped in his throat. The next day, Samuel Cross attended the funeral. He wore an expensive black suit tailored in St. Louis and carried a bouquet of white roses. On his right hand, he wore a silver ring with a black stone. Cole saw it when Samuel reached out to shake his hand. The ring that matched the bruise. But Cole said nothing. He had no proof, no witnesses, just a widower's intuition and a piece of grass. The old sheriff ruled it an accidental drowning. Case closed, investigation ended. Grace Elizabeth Brennan was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch she loved. She was 29 years old. Cole stood at her grave long after everyone left. The wind carried the smell of the river, that same river that had taken her. He made a silent promise to the cold earth. One day, somehow, he would prove what happened. He would find justice for Grace. But that day would not come for 8 long years. The screen faded to black and the seasons turned, hardening the man into a ghost. 8 years later, September 1882. Dodge City, Kansas, woke to brutal heat. By 9 in the morning, the temperature had already climbed past 90 degrees. It was the kind of heat that made horses irritable and men mean. Front Street bustled with the usual Friday crowd, cowboys fresh off the cattle drives, farmers in for supplies, gamblers heading home after all-night poker games, and walking among them was Emma Harper, carrying a basket of mended shirts. She was 24 years old, thin as a willow branch. With auburn hair she kept pinned tight under a faded bonnet. Her dress had been patched so many times it looked like a quilt. Her hands were rough from constant sewing, fingertips scarred by needle pricks. She walked with her eyes down, shoulders hunched, like a woman trying to make herself invisible. It never worked. The cowboys saw her coming. They always did. "Well, well," one of them drawled from the shade of the Long Branch saloon. "If it ain't Wet Emma." His friends laughed, a harsh sound that carried across the street. Shopkeepers looked away. Women pulled their children close and turned their backs. Emma kept walking. She had learned that responding only made it worse. "Hey, Emma!" Another cowboy stepped into her path. "What you soaking today? Sweat, tears, or did you already take a bath in the horse trough?" A third one added, "I heard she cries so much her tears could fill the river." The nickname had started 8 years ago at her parents' funeral. She had wept openly at their graveside while the whole town watched. The respectable women of Dodge City whispered that it was unseemly, that a proper young woman should show more restraint, that constant crying was a sign of weakness. The name stuck. Wet Emma. The girl who was always dripping something, always soaked, always pathetic. Emma tried to step around the cowboy blocking her path, but he moved with her. "Where are you going so fast?" he said. "Got another basket of washing to do. Heard you lost your job at the tailor shop." Emma stopped. She raised her eyes and looked directly at him for the first time in years. "Step aside," she said quietly. The cowboy blinked, surprised. Women did not usually speak to him that way, especially not women like Emma, poor, orphaned, alone. "Or what?" he said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "Or next time you need your pants mended, you will have to ride 50 miles to find someone willing to do it." She said it calmly, factually, like she was commenting on the weather. The cowboy stared at her. His friends watched. The street fell quiet. Then slowly he stepped aside, not because he was scared, but because something in her tone demanded a small measure of respect. Emma walked past him without another word. Her heart hammered in her chest, her hands shook, but she kept her spine straight until she turned the corner. That was when her legs almost gave out. She leaned against the wall of the general store and took deep breaths. That was the first time she had ever stood up to them. 8 years of abuse, and she had finally found enough anger to push back. But anger did not pay rent, and she had just lost her only source of income. Ruth Madsen, who owned the tailor shop, had fired her that morning. Not because Emma was bad at sewing, she was excellent, but because she was trouble. Emma pushed off the wall and headed toward the river. The wooden bridge crossing the Arkansas was old. The planks groaned under every footstep, but it was the fastest way to the west side of town where she might find a ranch wife who needed sewing done. She was halfway across when she heard the crack, the sound of old wood giving way. The plank beneath her right foot splintered and broke. Her leg dropped through the hole. Her basket flew from her hands. Shirts scattered into the air like white birds. Emma grabbed for the railing, but her fingers slipped on the dry wood. Then she was falling. The water hit her like a wall, cold, shockingly cold despite the heat. She went under immediately. Her cotton dress soaked through in seconds, becoming impossibly heavy. It pulled her down like lead weights. She kicked, but her boots filled with water. She flailed but could not find which way was up in the murky darkness. Her lungs burned. She opened her mouth to scream and river water rushed in. Panic seized her. This was how she would die, drowning in the same river that had killed so many others. And no one would care. No one would mourn Wet Emma. They would make jokes at her funeral. Through the water, she saw sunlight above. She kicked toward it. Her head broke the surface for one desperate breath. Then the current dragged her back under. On the bank, she could hear voices, laughter. They were not helping. They were watching, betting how long she could thrash before going under for good. Emma's vision darkened at the edges. Her limbs grew heavy. The cold wrapped around her like a blanket. She thought of her father, her mother. At least she would see them again soon. Then something grabbed her. Strong hands, rough and sure, gripped her waist. She was yanked upward out of the water into air and sunlight. She gasped and choked and coughed up river water. The hands held her steady, keeping her head above the surface. A voice spoke close to her ear, deep, calm, the kind of voice that had given orders in battle and expected them to be followed. "Stay still. You are all right. just breathe. Emma blinked water from her eyes and looked up at the man holding her. He was big, not just tall, but broad across the shoulders, thick through the chest. His face was weathered like old leather, lined by sun and wind. Grey touched his temples. He had the kind of eyes that had seen too much and stopped expecting joy. Cole Brennan. Everyone in Dodge City knew him. The rancher who lived alone, the widower who had not touched another human being in 8 years. They called him Cold Cole, not because he was cruel, but because he was absent, empty, a ghost in a living man's body. And yet, he had jumped into the river to save her. Cole began pulling her toward the shore, his movements efficient and powerful. Emma could feel the strength in him, not the showy strength of young cowboys, but the deep, practical strength of a man who had built a life with his bare hands. When they reached the shallows, Emma found her feet. She stood shaking, water streaming from her dress and hair. Her blouse clung to her skin, completely transparent. She crossed her arms over her chest, humiliated. Cole noticed. He shrugged out of his long canvas coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. It smelled like cedar and leather and horses. It was still warm from his body. "Thank you," Emma managed through chattering teeth. "Mr. Brennan, I thank you." Cole looked at her for a long moment. He really looked at her, not the way men usually did with hunger or judgment. He looked at her like she was a person, a human being worth saving. "You are getting me all wet," Emma blurted. The words came out before she could stop them. Nervous, stupid. She immediately wished she could take them back. Cole's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or sadness, or both. "Yes," he said simply. He led her up the bank. His horse, a beautiful Appaloosa, waited patiently nearby. On the opposite shore, the crowd that had gathered to watch her drown slowly dispersed. Disappointed, the show was over. Emma noticed a few women whispering behind their hands, pointing at her and Cole. She knew what they were thinking, what they would say. That wet Emma had found a new way to get attention, that Cole had finally shown interest in a woman, that something scandalous would surely follow. Let them talk, Emma thought. She was alive. That was all that mattered. Cole retrieved his gun belt from where he had hung it on his saddle before diving in. A Colt Peacemaker 45, well-maintained. The leather was oiled and supple. Everything about the man spoke of careful attention to detail. Nothing wasted, nothing careless. "Why did you help me?" Emma asked. It was not the question she meant to ask, but it was the one that came out. Cole adjusted the gun belt around his hips. When he finally looked at her again, something in his face had softened. Just a fraction. Just enough. "Because someone should have a long time ago." He said it quietly, like he was talking about more than just her drowning, like he was talking about all of it. The years of mockery, the isolation, the cruelty of a town that had decided she was worth nothing. High above the street, Samuel Cross stood at the window of his office above the Long Branch Saloon and watched Cole Brennan ride out of town with a dripping Emma Harper wrapped in his coat. His hand tightened on the glass of whiskey he held. Samuel was 48 years old and looked every day of it, not from hard living, but from hard scheming. His face was handsome in a snake oil way, too smooth, too practiced. His smile never quite reached his eyes. He wore expensive clothes bought in Kansas City. A gold watch chain stretched across his vest. On his right hand, a silver ring with a black stone caught the light. Behind him, the door opened. His lieutenant, Deacon, stepped in. Deacon was 40, brutal, and loyal in the way a dog is loyal because it fears the alternative. "Boss," Deacon said, "Brennan just pulled the Harper girl out of the river. I saw. Want me to do something about it?" Samuel swirled his whiskey, watching the amber liquid catch the sunlight. He remembered Grace Brennan, beautiful Grace, the woman who had almost been his, the woman who had chosen Cole instead, the woman who had threatened to destroy everything Samuel had built. And now Cole had his hands on Marcus Harper's daughter. "No," Samuel said slowly, "not yet. Let me think on this." Cole's ranch sat 5 miles west of town, 640 acres of good Kansas grassland split by a clear creek. The house was solid, built from logs in the Scandinavian style. Thick walls, small windows, the kind of structure that could survive a plains winter. Cole led Emma inside. The house was clean but Spartan. No decorations, no personal touches, just furniture and function. It looked like a place where someone existed rather than lived. "Sit," Cole said, gesturing to a chair by the fireplace. Emma sat. Her dress was still soaked, dripping onto the wooden floor. She felt awkward, out of place. This was not proper, an unmarried woman alone with a man in his house. The town would have a field day with her. But what choice did she have? Walk 5 miles back to town in a wet dress? Cole disappeared into another room and returned with a thick wool blanket. He handed it to her. "There is a screen in the corner. You can change behind it. I will put your dress by the fire to dry." Emma stared at him. The assumption that she would undress in his house, even behind a screen, should have been offensive. But the way he said it was so matter-of-fact, so practical, like he was solving a problem, not making an advance. "I do not have anything to change into," she said. Cole went to a trunk by the wall and pulled out a shirt. A man's shirt, but clean and soft. "This will do until your dress dries." He handed it to her and then deliberately turned his back. He walked to the other side of the room, giving her complete privacy. Emma slipped behind the screen. She peeled off the wet dress, shivering in the sudden cold. The shirt he had given her fell to her knees. It smelled faintly of soap and sun. She wrapped the blanket around herself and emerged. Cole took her wet dress without comment and draped it over a drying rack near the fireplace. He added wood to the fire, building it up. "You need work," he said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes. I need someone who can mend, sew, cook occasionally." He paused. "I can pay $15 a month plus room and board." Emma's breath caught. $15 was more than Ruth Madsen had paid her, and room and board meant she would not lose her housing. "There is a small cabin on the property," Cole continued. "Used to be the bunkhouse before I let the hands go. It is clean, private, yours if you want it." "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked. Cole poked at the fire, not looking at her. His shoulders were tight, his jaw clenched. "Because Grace would have wanted me to." The name hung in the air between them. Grace, his dead wife. Emma suddenly understood this was not about her. This was about him. "I accept," Emma said, "but I have one condition." Cole turned to look at her, surprised. "Teach me to shoot." His eyebrows rose. "Why?" "Because the next time I am in danger, I do not want to wait for someone to save me." Cole studied her, really studied her. Emma met his gaze without flinching. She had been weak for 8 years, powerless, dependent on the charity of people who despised her. No more. Cole nodded slowly. "Every morning after breakfast, we will start with a Winchester." He extended his hand to shake on it. Emma took it. His palm was calloused and warm. The handshake was firm, respectful. The handshake of equals, making a deal. For the first time since her parents died, Emma felt something stir inside her chest, something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The next morning, Emma woke before dawn in her new cabin. It was small but clean, with a real bed, a wood stove, and a window overlooking the creek. Better than any place she had lived since her parents died. She dressed quickly and walked to the main house. Cole was already awake. They ate in comfortable silence. Then Cole stood, picked up a rifle from the rack by the door, and headed outside. Emma followed. Behind the barn, Cole had set up targets, tin cans on fence posts 50 yards away. He handed Emma the rifle. "A Winchester model, 1873. First rule," Cole said. "Never point it at anything you do not intend to destroy, even if you think it is unloaded." Emma nodded. "Second rule, the rifle is an extension of your body. You do not aim with your eyes. You aim with your whole self. Feel where the bullet will go." He showed her how to hold it, how to breathe, how to squeeze the trigger rather than pull it. Breathe in, hold, squeeze on the exhale. Emma raised the rifle, sighted down the barrel. The tin can looked impossibly small and far away. She breathed in, held, squeezed. The rifle kicked against her shoulder, harder than she expected. The shot went wide, kicking up dust 3 feet left of the target. "Again," Cole said. She tried again. Miss, again, miss. Her shoulder was starting to bruise. Her arms ached. "I cannot do it," she said. "You can. You are overthinking. Trust yourself." Emma closed her eyes, took a breath, opened them, raised the rifle. This time she did not aim. She felt. She squeezed. The tin can jumped off the fence post. "Good," Cole said. "Now do it 99 more times." They practiced for 2 weeks. By the end, Emma could hit 5 out of 10 shots. Progress. As they walked back to the house, Emma asked, "You have killed men." Cole stopped. "Yes." "Does it get easier?" "No, it should not. The day it gets easy is the day you have lost your humanity." Then Sunday came. Church day. Cole asked Emma if she wanted to attend services. Emma hesitated. She had not been to church in months. Every time she went, people stared, whispered, made her feel like a stain on God's house. But something stubborn rose in her. She would not hide anymore. "Yes," she said, "I want to go." They rode into town together, Cole on Jasper, Emma on a gentle mare named Rosie. When they dismounted in front of the Methodist church, every head turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Emma kept her chin up, walked beside Cole up the steps. Inside, the church was packed, every pew full. People shifted uncomfortably as Cole and Emma entered. Some changed seats to avoid sitting near them. Others stared openly. Pastor Reynolds looked uncertain but nodded greeting. Cole guided Emma to a pew in the middle. Not the back where the outcasts sat. Not the front where the self-righteous held court. The middle, where normal people belonged. The service began. Emma tried to focus on the words, on the hymns, on anything except the weight of judgment pressing down on her from all sides. Then she felt movement behind her, someone standing. She glanced back. Samuel Cross. He had been sitting in the front pew as he always did. Now he stood, turned, and looked directly at Cole and Emma. His face wore a pleasant smile. His eyes were ice. He walked down the aisle slowly, deliberately, every step calculated for maximum attention. He stopped directly beside their pew. "Cole Brennan," Samuel said, his voice carrying through the silent church. "It has been too long." Cole did not stand, did not even turn his head. He stared straight ahead at the altar. "Samuel, I hear you have been busy hiring staff, taking in strays." The insult was subtle, deniable, but everyone heard it. "My business is my own," Cole said. Of course, of course." Samuel clasped his hands behind his back. "I only worry that you might not understand what you are getting into. Emma Harper is the daughter of Marcus Harper. Do you remember Marcus?" Cole's jaw tightened. He said nothing. "Marcus accused me of terrible things," Samuel continued. "Forgery, theft. He spent 3 months investigating me. The county found nothing because there was nothing to find. And then poor Marcus died in that awful fire. Such a tragedy. I always wondered if he had been careless with a lamp or if someone had been careless for him to warn him." The threat was unmistakable. Emma's hands clenched in her lap. Cole placed one of his hands over both of hers, a gesture of protection, of unity. Samuel noticed. His smile widened. "Be careful, Cole. Dodge City has seen too many accidents lately. The river, the fires, all these unfortunate coincidences. Would be a shame if another accident happened, especially to someone you care about." Cole stood slowly. He was 2 inches taller than Samuel and broader through the shoulders. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, deadly quiet. "You threaten her again, I will forget I am a civilized man." The church went dead silent. Even the children stopped fidgeting. Samuel's smile never wavered, but something flickered behind his eyes. Calculation, reassessment. "No threat," Samuel said lightly. "Just friendly advice between neighbors. I would hate to see anyone get hurt." He nodded to the congregation and walked back to his pew. The service resumed, but Emma heard nothing else. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. When the service ended, Cole and Emma left quickly, but not before Emma caught sight of several townspeople staring at her differently. Not with contempt anymore, but with curiosity. even perhaps a small measure of respect. Cold Cole had stood up for her in public, in church, against Samuel Cross. Everything had changed. Back at the ranch, Emma could not stop shaking, not from fear, but from anger, pure, burning anger. "He killed my father," she said. "I know he did. That fire was not an accident." Cole sat on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, looking out at the land. "I know. He killed your wife." "I know. Then why do we do nothing?" Cole was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with old grief. "Because knowing and proving are different things. I have known for 8 years that Samuel killed Grace, but I cannot prove it. Without proof, justice is just revenge." Emma sat beside him. "What if I told you there might be proof, or something close to it?" Cole turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Emma took a deep breath. This was the secret she had kept for 8 years. The one thing she had never told anyone. "My father kept a diary, very detailed. He wrote everything in it, his surveys, his discoveries, his suspicions." "It burned in the fire," Cole said. "No." Emma met his eyes. "That is what everyone thinks. But 2 days before he died, my father gave me a small notebook. He told me to hide it somewhere safe, somewhere no one would look. He said if anything happened to him, I should give it to someone I trusted." Cole's expression sharpened. "Do you still have it?" "Yes." "Where?" "Hidden, buried under the floor of my old boarding house room. I never went back for it because I was afraid. Afraid that if Samuel knew it existed, he would kill me too." Cole stood up, his mind already working. "What is in it?" "I do not know exactly. I never read it. I was 16, scared. All I knew was my father said it was important. Evidence of something big. We need to get it. Samuel will have people watching me now after the church. If I go back into town, someone will report it." "Then we go tonight," Cole said. 3 days passed before Cole decided it was safe to retrieve the diary. 3 days of watching the road. 3 days of noticing strangers loitering near the ranch. 3 days of Emma practicing with the Winchester until her shoulder was one continuous bruise. On the 3rd night, Cole saddled 2 horses in darkness. "We go now," he said. "Middle of the night, when Samuel's watchers are tired and cold and not paying attention." Emma wrapped herself in a dark shawl and checked the small pistol Cole had given her. A Derringer, 2 shots, close range only, but better than nothing. They rode under a sliver moon. The horses' hooves were muffled with cloth. Cole moved like a ghost, picking paths that avoided open ground. Emma followed, her heart hammering so hard she was sure it echoed across the prairie. Dodge City slept. Only the saloons showed light, and even those were winding down. Cole led Emma through back alleys to the boarding house where she had lived for 8 years, a sad building that smelled of cabbage and loneliness. They tied the horses 2 blocks away and approached on foot. The boarding house had no lock on the back door. It never had. Mrs. Keller, the landlady, was too cheap to install one. Cole eased the door open. The hinges squeaked. They both froze, listened. Nothing but snoring from upstairs rooms. Emma led the way to her old room on the 1st floor. The door hung crooked on its frame. Inside, everything was exactly as she had left it. The narrow bed, the cracked mirror, the single window that overlooked an alley where rats fought over garbage. She knelt beside the bed and pulled it away from the wall. The floorboard underneath had a knothole she had used as a finger grip. She pried it up. Beneath was a small cavity. Empty. Emma's breath caught. She reached deeper into the hole, fingers scrabbling against dirt and spiderwebs. Nothing. The diary was gone. "It was here," she whispered. "I swear it was here." Cole knelt beside her, ran his hand along the edges of the cavity. "Are you certain this is the right spot?" "Yes. I have dreamed of this spot for 8 years." They searched the room. Under the mattress, behind the loose baseboard, inside the ancient wardrobe. Nothing. "Someone took it," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Someone found it." The sound of footsteps in the hall froze them both. Heavy boots, multiple people. Cole's hand went to his gun. The door burst open. 3 men filled the frame, silhouetted against lamplight from the hall. Emma recognized Deacon immediately. Samuel's right hand, the man with dead eyes and quick fists. "Well, well," Deacon said. "Cased you like rats in a trap." Cole moved in front of Emma, his Colt cleared leather in a blur. "Back away." "Relax, Brennan. We ain't here to hurt you. Mr. Cross just wants his property back." "What property?" Cole asked. "The diary she just tried to steal?" Emma's mind raced. How did they know? Had they been watching her all this time? Deacon smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Mr. Cross has owned this building for 6 years. You think he did not search every room? That diary has been in his safe since 1876. The floor seemed to drop away beneath Emma. 6 years. Samuel had possessed her father's evidence for 6 years, and she had never known. "Why did he not destroy it?" Cole asked. "Insurance," Deacon replied. "Mr. Cross is a careful man. He keeps evidence of all his business dealings. Never know when you might need leverage. So he keeps proof of his own crimes. Proof of everyone's crimes, including some very powerful people who would not want certain information made public." Deacon's smile widened. "But now that you came looking for it, he knows you are a threat. Time to eliminate threats." Deacon's men moved into the room. Cole's gun tracked them. "One more step and I start shooting," Cole said. "Then you hang for murder. Sheriff will rule it self-defense on our part. You broke into this property, threatened us." It was true. They were trapped. Cole could shoot his way out, but then he and Emma would be outlaws. Samuel would win either way. Emma's hand found the derringer in her pocket. 2 shots, not enough. Then a voice came from behind Deacon. "Step aside." Everyone turned. A young man stood in the hallway, maybe 30 years old, lean and nervous. He held a shotgun with shaking hands. Jack Mercer. Emma recognized him, one of Samuel's regular crew. She had seen him in town, always at Samuel's elbow. "Why was he here?" "Jack," Deacon said. "What are you doing? Have you lost your mind?" Jack's shotgun never wavered. "Maybe. But I am done. Done with all of it. The threats, the violence, the good people dying. You work for Mr. Cross. I work for a man I thought was building something. Turns out he was just destroying. Difference matters." Deacon's hand drifted toward his gun. Jack pumped the shotgun. The sound was unmistakable, deadly. "Don't," Jack said. "I will kill you, Deacon, and I will sleep fine after." The standoff stretched. 5 people in a tiny room, 4 guns, nobody moving. Finally, Deacon spat on the floor. "You are a dead man, Mercer. Your sister, too." "My sister is already on a train to Colorado, left this afternoon. You cannot touch her." Deacon's face darkened. Without his leverage over Jack, he had no power. He gestured to his men. They backed out of the room, moving slow, watching for any opening. "This ain't over," Deacon said. "Yeah, it is," Jack replied. "It just took me too long to see it." When the footsteps faded down the stairs, Jack lowered the shotgun. He looked at Cole and Emma. "We need to go now before Deacon gets reinforcements." Cole still had his gun out. "Why did you help us?" Jack's face was drawn, haunted. "Because I know what Samuel Cross is. I know what he did. I was there the night he killed Mrs. Brennan." The room went silent. Emma felt Cole go rigid beside her. "What did you say?" Cole's voice was barely a whisper. "I did not participate, I swear. But I saw. I was 20 years old, stupid, scared. Samuel told me to wait by the river while he talked to someone. I heard shouting, saw him holding a woman under the water. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late." "And you said nothing." "I was a coward. Samuel threatened to kill my mother if I talked. She was sick, dying. I stayed silent until she passed 2 years later. Then I stayed silent because I was already in too deep." Jack's voice broke. He looked at the floor. "I have lived with that guilt every day for 8 years, watching you grieve, knowing I could have saved her if I had been brave. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am just trying to do one right thing before I die." Cole stared at Jack, his hand tight on the gun. For a moment, Emma thought Cole might shoot, might finally take the revenge he had been denied for so long. Instead, Cole holstered his gun. "Get us out of here," he said. "Then we talk." They moved fast through the sleeping town. Jack led them to where he had hidden 3 horses. As they rode, he explained, Samuel keeps everything in a safe at his ranch, deeds, contracts, letters, the diary. But he also keeps copies at the county courthouse in the records room. He has a friend on the county clerk's staff who lets him access it after hours. Why? Cole asked. 2 sets of evidence. One at the ranch where only he can get to it. One at the courthouse where it is protected by law. If one location is compromised, he still has the other. So we need to get into the courthouse. Yes, but it will not be easy. Samuel has been paranoid since you took in Emma. He has men watching the courthouse every night. They reached Cole's ranch as false dawn painted the eastern sky. Inside, Cole lit a lamp. The 3 of them sat around the table. Emma made coffee with shaking hands. Tell me everything, Cole said to Jack, about Grace, about that night. Jack took a breath and began. It was October 18th, 1874. Samuel got word that Grace Brennan had evidence against him, land fraud, forgery. She was planning to take it to a federal marshal the next day. Samuel panicked. He found her walking near the river at sunset. I was supposed to be keeping watch for witnesses. I heard them arguing. She refused to give him the documents, said she would rather die than let him steal from people anymore. Jack's voice dropped to a whisper. He grabbed her, dragged her into the water. She fought. God, she fought hard. But he was stronger. He held her head under until she stopped moving. Then he arranged her body to look like she had slipped and drowned. He even scraped her hands on rocks to make it look like she had tried to climb out. Cole's fists clenched on the table. His jaw worked, but he said nothing. The next night, Samuel sent men to burn Marcus Harper's house. Harper had been working with Grace, had all the evidence. The fire made sure nothing survived, or so Samuel thought. But the diary survived, Emma said. Samuel found it 2 years later. He has been keeping it as insurance ever since. Cole stood and walked to the window, stared out at the land turning gold in the sunrise. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, careful. Will you testify to this in court? Jack nodded. If you can promise me protection. Samuel will kill me the moment he knows I talked. I can promise that Sheriff Webb will do everything in his power to protect you, Cole said, and I will do the rest. Jack met Cole's eyes. I know I do not deserve your help, or your mercy. I should have spoken 8 years ago. You are speaking now. That is what matters. It was forgiveness of a kind. Not complete, not easy, but real. Emma cleared her throat. If the diary is at the courthouse, how do we get it? Cole turned from the window. His expression had changed. The grieving widower was gone. In his place stood something harder, a soldier, a man who had led cavalry charges and survived Apache ambushes. We steal it. Sheriff Webb arrived at the ranch an hour later. Cole had sent Jack to fetch him with a simple message, come alone. Urgent. Webb listened to everything. Jack's confession, the location of the diary, Samuel's dual record system. When they finished, Webb leaned back in his chair and rubbed his weathered face. This is a problem, he said. How so? Cole asked. Jack's testimony is valuable, but it is also tainted. He admits to being an accessory to murder. Any defense lawyer will tear him apart, Webb continued, paint him as a liar trying to save himself, and breaking into the courthouse makes the evidence inadmissible. Fruit of the poisonous tree. Any judge would throw it out. Emma slammed her hand on the table. So we do nothing? Let Samuel keep murdering people? I did not say that. Webb pulled out a notebook and began writing. I said we need to be smart, legal. We need a warrant. What grounds? Cole asked. Jack's testimony gives me probable cause, a witness to murder. That is enough for a judge to issue a search warrant. We search Samuel's ranch and the courthouse legally, seize all documents related to land fraud. How long will that take? 2 days, maybe 3. I need to ride to the circuit judge in Hayes City, present the evidence, get the warrant signed. Cole shook his head. Samuel will know something is happening. He will destroy everything. Not if we move fast and not if we keep him distracted. How? Webb smiled. It was not a friendly expression. By arresting him for public disturbance. Nothing serious, just enough to keep him locked up for 24 hours while I get the warrant. By the time he makes bail, I will be back with legal authority to search everything. It was a good plan. Legal. Careful. the kind of plan that would hold up in court. But Emma felt uneasy. Samuel Cross had survived this long by being smarter than his enemies. He would not go quietly into a cell, not without a backup plan of his own. "What do you need from us?" Cole asked Webb. "Stay here. Stay safe. Let the law do its job. For once." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but Webb was right. They had done their part. Now it was time for justice to run its course. Webb stood to leave. As he reached the door, he turned back. "Jack, you will need to come with me. Protective custody. I can keep you safe in the jail." Jack nodded. "What about Emma? If Samuel knows I am talking, he will go after her next." "She stays here with Cole. And with this." Webb pulled a badge from his pocket and set it on the table. "Cole Brennan, I am deputizing you. Legal authority to defend this property and everyone on it. Anyone tries to harm Miss Harper, you have my permission to respond with appropriate force." Cole picked up the badge, turned it over in his hands. It had been years since he had worn any symbol of authority, but he pinned it to his vest without hesitation. "I will keep her safe." Samuel Cross sat in his office above the Long Branch saloon and listened to Deacon's report. His face showed no emotion, a mask of calm cultivated over 15 years of ruthless ambition. His hands rested calmly on his mahogany desk, steady as stone, but inside his mind burned like a forge. "Jack Mercer betrayed you," Deacon said, his voice low and tight with pain from the bruising encounter at the boarding house. "He helped Brennan and the girl escape. He is with the sheriff now, probably talking, telling them everything about the river, about the fires." Samuel stood and walked to his safe, a massive iron box built into the wall behind a painting of a landscape he had never visited. He spun the combination and opened it. Inside were stacks of documents, deeds, contracts, letters from politicians and judges, evidence of 15 years of carefully orchestrated crimes, and one small leather diary. He pulled it out. Marcus Harper's diary, the only existing proof that Samuel had systematically forged land deeds across 3 counties. The evidence that could send him to prison for the rest of his life, or to the gallows. Samuel had kept it because he believed in insurance, in leverage, in always having something to bargain with. But now it was a liability, a bomb waiting to explode. He could destroy it, burn it in the fireplace right now, make it disappear into ash and smoke. But that would leave the courthouse copies, and he could not get to those without raising suspicion, especially now that Webb was watching him. No, he needed a different solution, a total solution. "Deacon," Samuel said slowly, weighing each word, "how many men can you gather on short notice? Loyal men, men who know the price of silence." "Maybe 8, Deacon replied, shifting his weight. 10 if I call in some favors from the cattle crews." "Call them in. Everyone. Tell them to be ready tonight." "For what?" Deacon asked. Samuel turned from the safe, the diary still in his hand. His face was calm, but his eyes held a cold madness that made even Deacon, a man who had killed without blinking, take a step back. "If I cannot have Dodge City," Samuel said quietly, "then no one will. We are going to burn the past, Deacon. Every scrap of paper, every record, every memory, every—" That afternoon, Sheriff Webb returned from town. He found Cole repairing fence posts while Emma practiced shooting in the distance. The steady crack of the Winchester echoed across the prairie, a rhythmic reminder of the danger they were in. "She is getting better," Webb said, riding up beside Cole. "She has natural talent, just needed someone to teach her." Cole set down his hammer and wiped sweat from his brow. "Webb, we have a problem," the sheriff said, his face grim. "What kind of problem?" "The judge in Hayes City is gone. Riding circuit in the eastern counties. Will not be back for 4 days." "Can you go to another judge?" Cole asked. "Nearest one is in Topeka. That is a 3-day ride each way." Cole did the math in his head. 6 days minimum before they could get a warrant. 6 days for Samuel to prepare, to hide evidence, to eliminate threats. "That is too long," Cole said. "I know, but it is the legal way. The right way." "Webb, with respect, the legal way got Grace killed. It got Marcus Harper killed. It got 5 other people killed. Maybe it is time to try something else." Webb dismounted, stood face to face with Cole, 2 men who respected the law but understood its limitations. "What are you suggesting?" Webb asked. "I am suggesting that if someone were to accidentally discover evidence of a crime while investigating a separate matter, that evidence would still be admissible in court." Cole leaned against the fence post. "And I am suggesting that if a deputy acting on his legal authority happened to pursue a suspect into county property and happened to witness said suspect destroying evidence, that would give immediate probable cause for seizure." Webb was quiet for a long moment, watching the horizon. Then he shook his head. "You are talking about entrapment, about bending the law so far it breaks." "I am talking about getting justice for my wife," Cole said, his voice hard. "And I am talking about making sure that justice sticks. That Samuel Cross does not walk free on a technicality because we were too polite to stop him." They stared at each other. Finally, Cole said, "What if we do both? What if we get your warrant, but also create a situation where Samuel incriminates himself, backs himself into a corner where he has no choice but to confess?" "How?" Webb asked. "By making him think he is already lost, by taking away the illusion of his safety. When a man like Cross thinks he is untouchable, he is careful. When he panics, he gets sloppy. He makes mistakes." Webb considered this. "You want to drive him into a confession? I want to give him a chance to do the right thing before we do it for him." Webb looked out at the land, at Emma in the distance, firing methodically at targets, at the ranch Cole had built with his own hands. "All right," Webb said. "We try it your way, but carefully, legally, no unnecessary risks." "Agreed." They shook hands. Two men bound by honor and grief and the desperate hope that justice might still be possible. What they did not know was that Samuel Cross had already set his own plan in motion, and when two plans collide, someone always gets hurt. Night fell like a curtain over the plains. Emma made dinner while Cole and Webb planned in low voices. Jack stayed at the jail, protected by two deputies Webb trusted completely. At 9 o'clock, a rider approached the ranch at a full gallop. Cole stepped onto the porch, rifle ready. The rider pulled up hard, horse lathered and blowing. It was Deputy Miller. "Sheriff!" Miller gasped, sliding from the saddle. "Fire in town! Multiple buildings!" They could see it now. A glow on the horizon, orange light against the dark sky, smoke rising in thick columns that blotted out the stars. "What is burning?" Webb demanded. "Courthouse, land office, county clerk's building, all the records, everything." Emma felt her stomach drop. All the evidence, all the copies Samuel had stored, gone. Cole grabbed Webb's arm. "This is his play. He is destroying everything. We have to stop him." "It is too late," Webb said, watching the glow intensify. "Those buildings are already burning. The records are ash." "Not the ranch," Cole said. "He still has the originals at his ranch." Webb understood immediately. "We ride now." They saddled horses in darkness. Emma insisted on coming. Cole tried to argue, but she cut him off. "That diary belonged to my father. I'm not staying behind." There was no time to argue. The three of them rode hard toward town. Behind them, the ranch sat empty, unguarded, which was exactly what Samuel Cross had been counting on. They reached Dodge City to find half the town fighting fires, bucket brigades, shouting chaos. The courthouse was fully engulfed, flames shooting through the roof, illuminating the faces of the desperate townsfolk. The land office collapsed as they watched, sending a shower of sparks into the night. Webb grabbed the fire chief. "Was anyone inside?" "No," the chief shouted over the roar of the flames. "Buildings were empty. Fire started after hours, almost like someone wanted to destroy records, not hurt people." Cole and Emma exchanged looks. Samuel was covering his tracks methodically, ruthlessly. "We need to get to his ranch," Cole said, "before he destroys the rest." They pushed through the crowd toward the edge of town. That was when Emma saw him, Samuel Cross, standing in the shadow of an alley, watching the fires burn. He was not panicking, not rushing around like everyone else, just standing, smoking a cigar, watching his problems turn to ash. Their eyes met across the chaos. Samuel smiled. It was a terrifying expression. He tipped his hat, turned, and walked into the darkness. "He knows we are here," Emma said, grabbing Cole's sleeve. "He wanted us here, away from the ranch." Cole's face went pale. The realization hit him like a physical blow. "The diary," he whispered. "We left it at the ranch. In my study. I left it on the desk. They had walked into a trap. Samuel had burned the public records to draw them out, sending them chasing across town while his men ransacked the ranch. Without a word, Cole spurred his horse. Emma and Webb followed. They rode like demons through the night, pushing the horses to their limits. But they all knew, deep in their guts, that they were too late. When they reached the ranch, the front door stood open. The lamps inside were smashed. Cole ran inside, gun drawn. The study had been torn apart. Desk drawers smashed, papers scattered like snow. The diary was gone. Cole stood in the wreckage of his home and felt the weight of failure crushing down on him. They had been so close to justice. And Samuel had outplayed them again. Emma touched his arm. "We will find another way." "There is no other way," Cole said, his voice hollow. "Without evidence, we have nothing. It is his word against ours, and he owns the judges." Webb picked through the debris, his face grim. He took everything, every scrap of paper that might have been useful. Then, from the doorway, a voice spoke. "Not everything." They turned. Jack Mercer stood there, leaning heavily against the doorframe. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, and his shirt was torn. He looked like he had been in a fight with a grizzly bear. Behind him stood 2 deputies, equally battered. "What happened?" Webb demanded, rushing to help him. "Samuel's men hit the jail," Jack wheezed. "Tried to kill me. Your deputies fought them off, but it was close." Jack held up a leather satchel. "I grabbed this from evidence storage before we evacuated. Figured you might need it." He opened the satchel. Inside was Marcus Harper's diary. The real one. The one Samuel thought he had destroyed. Emma stared, unable to comprehend. "But that was at the courthouse. We saw it burn. Or at the ranch." "No," Jack said, managing a weak smile. "I switched it out this afternoon. Gave Samuel a fake one to find if he came looking. Kept the real one in the jail safe. Turns out I learned a few tricks working for a criminal." Cole took the diary with shaking hands. He opened it, page after page of Marcus Harper's meticulous notes, dates, names, proof of every forged deed, every crime, everything they needed to destroy Samuel Cross. "You did this?" Cole asked Jack. "You saved this?" "I owed you," Jack whispered. "Owed Grace. Owed every person Samuel hurt." Jack swayed on his feet. "And now, I think I need to sit down." He collapsed. The deputies caught him before he hit the floor, blood soaked through his shirt, not just from the cut on his head, but from a stab wound in his side that they hadn't seen in the darkness. "Get him to the doctor," Webb ordered. "Now!" Emma rushed to Jack's side as the deputies lifted him. She pressed her shawl against the wound to staunch the flow. "Stay with us, Jack. You hear me? You saved us all. Now let us save you." Jack's eyes flickered open. Blood bubbled at his lips. "Diary safe?" "Yes," Cole said, kneeling beside him. "Because of you." "Good." Jack's voice was barely a whisper. "Tell Sarah. Tell her I finally did something right." "You will tell her yourself," Emma said fiercely. Jack managed a weak smile before his eyes closed. As they carried Jack away to the wagon, Cole looked at the diary in his hands, then at Emma, then at Webb. The grief and the exhaustion fell away, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "We end this," Cole said. "Tonight, before Samuel can run, before he can hide, before he can hurt anyone else." Webb nodded, agreeing. "I will gather every man I can trust. We arrest him at his ranch, legal, official, with overwhelming force." "And if he resists?" Cole asked, checking the load in his Colt. Webb looked at the burning horizon of Dodge City, then back at the blood on the floor where Jack had collapsed. "Then we respond accordingly." Cole strapped on his gun belt. He handed Emma her rifle. Her movements were sure and confident as she checked the chamber. They were done running, done reacting, done letting Samuel Cross dictate the terms. Tonight, justice would finally have its day, or they would die trying. The screen faded to black as they rode toward Samuel Cross's ranch, a small army of righteous men seeking to end 15 years of terror. Samuel Cross's ranch sprawled across 500 acres of prime Kansas land. The main house stood 3 stories tall, painted white, with columns that pretended at southern grandeur. It looked like the home of a respectable man, a pillar of the community. It was a fortress built on blood and lies. Sheriff Webb led 20 armed men through the darkness. Cole rode beside him, badge gleaming in the moonlight. Emma stayed back with 5 men guarding the horses. She had argued to join the assault, but Cole had refused. "If something goes wrong," he had said, holding her shoulders, "someone needs to survive to tell the truth." So she waited and watched and prayed. Jack Mercer remained at the doctor's house in town 2 miles away. The stab wound had been deep. Dr. Morrison said it would be weeks before Jack could walk without pain. Webb had posted Deputy Miller to guard him. The young man who had turned against Samuel Cross deserved protection. And Jack had information that could still help convict Samuel if the diary somehow disappeared again. Emma thought of Jack lying in that narrow bed, pale and weak. He had saved them all. Now they had to finish what he started. The men surrounded the house. Webb called out through a speaking trumpet, his voice booming over the manicured lawn. "Samuel Cross, this is Sheriff Thomas Webb. You are under arrest for land fraud, murder, and conspiracy. Come out with your hands raised." Silence answered him. The house sat dark and still. Then laughter drifted from an open window on the 2nd floor. Samuel's voice carried through the night air, mocking and unafraid. "On what charges, Sheriff? You have no evidence. It all burned tonight. Every scrap. You are trespassing on private property." Webb pulled the diary from his coat and held it high in the moonlight. "Not all of it. Marcus Harper's diary survived. Every crime, every forgery, it is all documented here." The silence that followed was different, heavier, dangerous. "You are lying," Samuel shouted, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Come see for yourself," Webb replied, "or we come in and drag you out. Your choice." More silence. Then the front door opened. Samuel stepped onto the porch, hands raised. He was smiling, that same snake oil smile he always wore. "Gentlemen," he called out, "there has been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Webb said, signaling his men to advance. "You are under arrest." 2 deputies moved forward to cuff him. That was when Deacon and 3 other men burst from the concealment of the porch shadows, guns blazing. The night erupted in gunfire. Cole dove behind a water trough as bullets splintered the wood above his head. Men shouted, horses screamed. The careful arrest became a battlefield. Samuel used the chaos to run, not toward the barn or the horses, but toward the back of the property where a small creek offered cover in the tree line. Cole saw him go. Without thinking, without hesitation, he broke cover and gave chase. Behind him, the fight continued. Webb's men were winning. They had the numbers and the surprise, but Samuel was escaping. Cole ran hard, his boots pounding the earth, following the sound of crashing through the brush. The creek appeared ahead, black water reflecting starlight. Samuel splashed across, making for the darkness beyond. "Stop!" Cole shouted. Samuel did not stop. Cole raised his rifle. He had a clear shot. He could end it right here. Justice delivered with 1 bullet. But that was not justice. That was revenge. Cole lowered the rifle and kept running. The accusation changed everything. They locked Samuel in the Dodge City jail, with guards on duty around the clock. But the atmosphere was thick with tension. Blackwood knew. Federal marshals tried to interview the senator in Topeka, but he lawyered up within an hour, claiming Samuel's confession was coerced and the diary was inadmissible. Webb warned Cole that this was the most dangerous time. When powerful men felt threatened, witnesses disappeared. He was right. The attack came 2 days later. Emma was in town buying supplies, escorted by 2 deputies, when 2 professional hitmen struck. They emerged from the alley near the general store, moving with lethal precision. One grabbed Emma, a knife flashing in the sunlight. But they hadn't counted on 2 things, Emma's training and Jack Mercer. Emma drove her elbow into the attacker's ribs and spun away, just as Cole had taught her. The second man raised his gun, but a shotgun blast roared from the hotel balcony across the street. Jack Mercer, defying the doctor's orders and his own injuries, stood there, smoke curling from the barrel. He had been watching over her. The attacker fell. The deputies subdued the other. Jack collapsed, his wound reopened, blood soaking his bandages. He had saved her life again, proving once and for all that he was no longer the coward who had watched Grace die. He was a protector. The trial began on a Tuesday morning in late October, drawing national attention. The courthouse was packed, the air stifling. Judge William Harrison presided, a man known for his stern fairness. Samuel Cross sat at the defense table, looking respectable again in a fresh suit. but his eyes darted around the room like a trapped rat. The prosecution presented the diary, the forged deeds, and the testimony of the surveyor's widow. Then they played their ace. Senator James Blackwood was called to the stand. He testified under subpoena, arrogant and dismissive, denying all knowledge of the murders. He claimed his relationship with Cross was purely financial, but the prosecution produced a letter found in Samuel's safe, a letter Blackwood had written 3 years prior. It read, "Harper is a problem. Proceed with elimination. Destroy all evidence." Blackwood turned pale as the prosecutor read the words aloud. "Elimination, Senator?" the prosecutor asked. "Did you mean murder?" Blackwood stammered, claiming he meant a business buyout, but the jury saw the truth. His arrogance crumbled, leaving only a frightened man realizing his power had run out. Samuel Cross, seeing his partner fold, laughed from the defense table. If he was hanging, he was taking Blackwood with him. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Samuel Cross, guilty of murder in the first degree, guilty of fraud, guilty of conspiracy. Senator Blackwood, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. The courtroom erupted in cheers, a release of 15 years of fear and frustration. Judge Harrison sentenced Samuel Cross to death by hanging. Blackwood received 25 years in federal prison. His political career was incinerated. Samuel was executed 30 days later in the public square. Cole attended. Emma did not. She had no desire to watch a man die, even a guilty one. Samuel's last words were defiant, claiming he regretted nothing, but the drop of the trapdoor silenced him forever. Jack Mercer was given a light sentence of 18 months for his role as an accessory, with credit for his cooperation. It was justice, messy, painful, but real. The town breathed again. The shadow that had hung over Dodge City for a decade finally lifted, dispersed by the light of truth. Spring came to Kansas, bringing a riot of wildflowers to the prairie. Emma's tailoring business thrived, and the ranch prospered. One evening in late May, Cole found Emma on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson. He sat beside her, the silence between them comfortable and full of unspoken understanding. "Emma Harper," he said, turning the brim of his hat in his hands. "I have a question for you." "Yes?" she asked, turning to him. "Will you marry me?" Emma looked at this man who had saved her from the river, who had taught her to shoot, who had shown her that she was strong. "Cole Brennan, are you certain?" "I am not Grace. I will never be Grace." Cole took her hand, his grip warm and sure. "I know. I do not want Grace. I love the memory of who she was. But I love you for who you are. You are brave. You are strong. You challenged me to live again when I had given up." Emma felt tears on her cheeks, happy tears. "Yes," she whispered. "I will marry you." They wed a month later. Sheriff Webb officiated. The whole town attended, not to gossip, but to celebrate. Years passed, and the story of the girl in the river and the rancher who saved her became legend. The Harper Brennan Land Reform Act of 1884 was passed, preventing the kind of fraud Samuel had committed. Jack Mercer served his time, returned to Dodge, and eventually became sheriff when Webb retired, a guardian of the peace who knew the cost of silence. Emma and Cole had a son, Marcus Cole Brennan, named for the 2 men who had taught them courage. The screen faded to black. Then text appeared. 1920. Emma Brennan, age 62, sat on her porch. Her grandson, 10 years old, sat beside her. "Grandma," the boy said, "tell me about the river." Emma smiled, looking out at the water that flowed in the distance. "I was drowning," she said softly, "but I survived because someone good chose to help. And because I learned that fear does not mean weak. It just means human." "What happened to the bad men?" "Justice found them, as it always does, eventually, if good people stand up." The boy nodded, determined. "I want to be like great-grandfather Cole." Emma touched his cheek. "Then stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. That is the legacy." The river ran on, cold and deep, but the love they had built was warmer, and it would last forever.